Hey now, it's Sharon, and I'm back to share another idea on how we can better policing here in the U.S. If you're new to the channel, I'm a retired detective. I worked for 20 years for a southeastern city in the U.S., and I was also in the military. I share ideas, perspectives, insight, opinions, and my experience in hopes of helping others think differently or give them a different perspective or a different way of viewing things and how I saw things while I was policing, and I share some of the things that I went through. And this is the platform I choose to share it on. So with that being said, I'm gonna keep it real quick. In the book that I wrote, and remember I talked about, here it is right here, a Middle Eastern conflict, looking back at my future. The book talks about looking back at my future, and I talk about landmarks. When I look back at my past, it is a hint to where I'm heading to in the future. And so when I look back, I equate it to walking in the sand on the beach, and when you look back at your footprints, those are the landmarks in your life when you look back. And I realized the other day, that the ostracism and the retaliation that I faced in whistleblowing while I was a police officer is not the first time I went through that. I actually had landmarks from two prior jobs, actually. I look back at those instances where I ended up telling the truth. I worked at a nursing home, and they were doing some things they weren't supposed to do. And I was asked by the RN who oversaw the program that I was in what happened. And I just told the truth, not realizing that telling the truth, I was going to get ostracized by the other nurses. Well, they weren't nurses at the time. We were in the program to become nurses. And the way they treated me and ostracized and retaliated against me, I ended up having to leave. They tried to fire me, but I left before that. Blatantly lied about certain things, dealing with the older patients and things like that. And I look back on that and I realized I grew from it. I learned some things, got some knowledge. And then there was another instance in the job, 2 jobs after that, where I was dealing with schizophrenic, dual diagnosed individuals. So most of them had some form of schizophrenia, some level. And I worked there for like 10 years. And no, it was 5 years. It was 5 years into it when I was retaliated against and ostracized for telling the truth there. And I look back at that as a landmark where certain things that I learned, it was traumatic because, again, I was ostracized and retaliated against by the supervisor, no doubt, and not my direct supervisor, but I was retaliated against and ostracized to some degree, and that was a landmark. But looking back dictated my future to some degree, because then I became a police officer, and here I am experiencing this for the 3rd time, telling the truth because I was asked, and being ostracized and retaliated against. So I talked about how I would ask the future Sharon certain questions on how to deal with present things. And I talked about knowing who I was on a spiritual level, on a physical level, and where I came from, where my family came from, and my ancestors, people before me. Those are landmarks also. And I talked about how as a child, I always wanted to know where I came from, the people before me, but being taught here, it stopped or began at slavery. And I knew better than that. And some people don't want to know, and that's okay, but I wanted to know. And so that sent me in search of those landmarks, so to speak. Looking back, I know we were more than just slaves. And looking back now, I know where I come from to some degree, which it's like something lifts off of you. It's a heaviness that lifts off of you in not knowing, because those landmarks will inform the present Sharon. And I'm talking about the landmarks in my family, knowing that I come from this tribe in Africa, in this area, knowing that that particular tribe is a part of the original 12 tribes of Jacob and his sons. Interesting, isn't it? And that's something, if I had known that earlier, I probably would have carried myself differently in knowing that I come from that line. Of course, I can't go back to the past, but like I said, the past informs the present. So who knows? I could have been president by now. That's not something I want to do. But just the thinking and realizing and reading the Bible and now seeing myself in it, as opposed to not seeing myself in something that is supposed to be the authority, or where I get the book that I give the final word to when I look through the Bible. I give the final word to, and I don't see myself in it. Was I being true to myself then when I was reading it, as opposed to now? And so I say that, all of that, because it's in the book. As an officer, you need to know yourself. Now, how deep you want to know yourself, I would say the heart posturing. And if the heart posturing takes you on a journey to find out why you think the way you do, you might have to do that. Because I will admit, when I got into policing, as they say, filled with piss and vinegar, I was running and gunning with the best of them, running, jumping fences, tackling folks, all that stuff. But I didn't have the empathy or the sympathy in place to say, okay, you know what? Let me take a step back. This us versus them is not working, because when I got pulled over by a cop 3 times, and they couldn't give me a reason why. It's only because maybe my profile might look like a guy from far back, and now I'm brown. You pulled me over for what reason? They couldn't tell me. They could not tell me, and I knew why. But that made me think also, like, this us versus them, I'm a part of us. But when I get out of uniform, I'm part of them. I become them for some people. So I wanted to know more of who I was. That helped me dive into my heart. And in my heart, I wanted to know, one of the questions was, where did I come from? Who am I? And so I just share that little bit. As an officer, a career officer, or getting into it, know who you are. Know who you are, where you come from, if you want to know, of course. So you can look back at the landmarks that will guide your decisions in this present time. I promise you they will. All right, that's all I want to share. Take a look at our online store. The link is in the description. The book link will be in the description. And is always our tradition, you don't necessarily have to go through a thing to learn from it. Talk to you guys later. Bye.